is it safe to say you subscribe to the multiverse?
I'd say it a little softer than that. I'd say that one of the respected interpretations of modern quantum theory is that there are multiple universes that result from splitting of one universe.
Welcome to the Paco's Place podcast. Rejuvenate your smile with Dr. Lourdes Capelong's comprehensive range of dental solutions. Along with general dentistry, Dr. Capelong specializes in cosmetic dentistry, including teeth whitening, bonding, dental veneers, and surgical crowns. Whether it's urgent care or preventive treatment, she'll take care of you and your smile. To schedule an appointment, call the clinic at area code 323-257-7582. Exciting news, guys! Our summer flight giveaway is officially here, and we are thrilled to offer you the chance to win one of 20 free flights. Whether you want to surprise your loved ones or treat yourself to a spontaneous getaway, this giveaway is perfect for you. Participating is easy. Simply download the SendWave app and register. Make sure to enter promo code Paco if this is your first time sending. From August 11th to September 8, 2023, send $300 or more using SendWave and you'll automatically be entered into the draw for a chance to win. But wait, there's more. To boost your chances of winning, for every additional $100 you send, you'll earn an extra entry into the giveaway. So the more you send, the higher your chances of winning a free flight. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity to send money with love and potentially win a memorable flight experience. Download the SendWave app, enter the giveaway, and get ready to embark on an incredible journey. But right now, let's go for an incredible podcast. And the podcast will begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Live at Paco's Place, Dr. Randall Scharlach. How are you, Doc?
Fantastic. I had a great lunch.
Oh my
Thank
God,
you.
yeah. I've been wanting to have this conversation because during lunch I had to finish the food just so that I don't do the podcast at the restaurant.
We could have started early.
I know. but Doc, okay, you're an oncologist. Not only that, you have another practice. What is it?
So I'm a practitioner of voodoo. By day, I have a machine that sends an invisible ray of x-rays into patients' bodies to make cancer go away.
Yes.
But then at night, my other voodoo is I'm a practitioner of psychedelic medicine.
So let's talk about your day job first, your day practice. Why did you want to specialize in beating cancer?
Well, in radiation in particular,
radiation,
yeah. So I went to medical school thinking that I would be a pediatric oncologist. The reason oncology appealed to me is I like fixing things. And in most of medicine, a lot of patients don't realize this, but most doctors don't fix anything. If you have high blood pressure, we give you a pill to control your blood pressure, not fix the problem. If you have diabetes, we manage your blood sugar. We don't fix it. But in oncology, you make cancer go away. And I realized that treating kids was not quite my thing because it's hard to interact with them. You know, an infant it's more like veterinary medicine, but I really like talking to people about what's going on, and radiation oncology is a perfect fusion of my interest in medicine, my interest in people, and my interest in physics. Yeah, I'm very, very interested in physics, and so that my job is a perfect combination of those things.
How long have you been practicing?
Well, I got out of medical school in 95 and I started my radiation oncology residency in 96. So what's that, 28 years?
And the reason why I'm asking, so oncology, fixing things, not just giving them a fix, but actually eradicating whatever it is that they have. So it's a battle. It's every patient is you getting in the ring, hoping to win, wanting to win. Right? Technology 1995, 1996 isn't like what we have now. What's the difference between now and when you started? Now would be 2023 when we're doing this taping. But what's the difference now as opposed to decades ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's almost like I planted you with that, but for the audience, I didn't. Well, the reason it's a great plant question is because there was an enormous revolution in technology in the field of radiation oncology that happened right around the year 2000 to 2002. And when I was in medical school and when I was a resident, our technologies in terms of aiming where the beam went was pretty rudimentary, and our technology to shape the cloud of radioactive energy that goes inside of a patient was fairly rudimentary. But now,
can you explain that further? Like, is that more like 1:1? Point
well,
it here.
let's just say you have a lung cancer.
Yeah.
Okay. In the olden days, I would basically take an X-ray picture, and then I'd take literally a wax crayon, and I would draw on that X-ray picture the shape of a lead block that went into the machine. So the only amount of radiation that came out of the machine was a hole in this lead block that conformed to the shape of your tumor. And there'd be a beam from the front and a beam from the back. And that's really the extent of what we did.
Right.
But now what we can do is, and the technology is way too advanced to talk about it on the podcast, but we now have the ability to shape a cloud of radiation that goes inside of a patient's body that perfectly conforms to the shape of that tumor and leaves very little radiation deposited elsewhere. And that allowed us to very safely escalate the doses that a patient can tolerate. And so we're killing a lot more cancer than we did 25 years ago with a lot less toxicity. And so it's just an incredible leap in technology that happened. And another thing that happened is we can now aim the radiation beam much more precisely, because a tumor can move around, and daily positioning of a patient isn't always precise.
Yes.
But now we have the ability to look inside of a patient every single day and say, where is this tumor today? And then shift the X-ray beam. Because in the old days, we had to create X-ray beams that were bigger than the target area.
For the margin of error,
exactly, to accommodate for any positioning uncertainty.
Yes.
But that greater X-ray beam size caused a lot more collateral damage.
Yes.
And it also limited the dose that we could safely deliver.
Because of the collateral damage it may cause, right?
Exactly. But now, because the X-ray beam is smaller, there's much less collateral damage, and so the patient tolerates the treatment better, but we can also drive the dose higher and cure more people.
Speaking of cure more people, a while ago while we were having lunch, she and my little 8-year-old daughter had a nice conversation. We were starting with COVID, and then she goes, does COVID still exist, right? That's what she said. And your answer was, well, right now it's like the flu. That's paraphrasing, but that's very optimistic, because I lost my mom to cancer, and my wish is for someone like you to say that in the future, that, cancer, you'll be well tomorrow. Fortunately, we do have friends who've had cancer and now they're all in remission, a decade in remission, 2 decades in remission. But what's your take on it? How optimistic are you, if you even are?
Well, your question's getting at an age-old question that I hear a lot, which is, when are we going to cure cancer?
We are curing cancer.
And that's the reality. It's like COVID, right?
Yeah.
There are still some people that get COVID and they get sick, but most people get COVID and they just get over it.
Amen.
Will there ever be a day that nobody dies from influenza and nobody dies from COVID? Probably not.
Yes.
Will there ever be a day where nobody dies from cancer? Probably not.
Amen.
But we're making progress decade by decade. We're slowly chipping away. And it's not just at treating cancer, but we're also learning how to screen for cancers and help prevent cancers.
I see. Now, with regard to seeing a patient as a doctor, and I remember asking my uncle, how do you detach yourself? Because I'm an empath, and so I know that it's probably going to be hard for me to be in that field. But how do you communicate with patients? Like, you've seen patients, you probably know the propensity for them to survive or not survive. How do you detach or attach yourself to patients on a human level?
Well, so there's 2 questions in there. Like, how do I communicate with patients and how do I detach? And I think what you're asking by detach is, how do I have their fear and trauma not stick to me?
Yes.
Right? Well, to answer the second question, is a great question. And
Thank you.
it's difficult for me to put my answer into words, but the very best description that I found to explain to people when they ask me this question is that I imagine myself as like a net, such that their traumatic or fear or anger can fly through me, and there really isn't any substrate for that to stick on me. So I don't necessarily need to, go vent after work, or, I don't necessarily have a practice that helps me de-stress, because the stress never gets stuck on me, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
And then the first question of how do I communicate with people? I just try to have a really natural conversation without using any doctor language, because most people want to be talked to in language that they understand.
You know what? Just by you talking to me, I'm already having some some chest pain going. Oh my God. I mean, just the communication. It's like, say, you're fired for life or whatever. You know what I mean?
No,
It's
I
like,
don't know what you mean.
It's like you're an HR for my life. Like, I'm letting you go soon. Remember when someone goes to HR and are about to be let go, it's hard for that HR person to actually fire a person. Are you one of the doctors that will actually?
You've been meeting much nicer HR people than I have in my life. Most of the HR people I know are like, they're Terminators. They're like legit robots.
Exactly. But have you encountered an instance in your practice where you actually had to tell somebody that they are terminally ill?
Sure, I'm an oncologist.
Exactly. Right?
My job is to go into the octagon every day and have a no rules fight with the Grim Reaper. That's
what I want to talk about.
That's
Doc.
the way I imagine my job.
Take us there. Take us there to that octagon where you have to do that and wish you didn't have to do that or say that to somebody.
Well, here's this. I don't know if this is exactly answering your question, but I can tell you an anecdote of the way I've evolved my communication style as I've matured. I used to think, well, I still think it's very important to be open and honest with patients, because patients have this bullshit detector. If you're not being honest or forthright with them, they can tell that, and they can't put their finger on it, like what's not coming through, but they can sense that there's something out there that they need to know that they're not hearing. And so because of that, I really value being honest with patients. But when I was younger, I adopted a more straightforward communication style where I would just kind of tell the patient the results of their labs and tests and what that means. And I realized over time that being kind of blunt and upfront with all the information up front can be so overwhelming to somebody that at best they don't hear it. And at worst, then they overreact and stop fighting because they think the game's up. And so what I've done over time is I've realized that when you have bad news to deliver somebody, it's best to deliver it in pieces. And so like during radiation, I'll meet with my patients once a week. And if you're going to have a 6-week course of treatment, that means we're going to meet 6 times.
Yes.
And so at the beginning, I can say, this treatment that you've got is an uphill battle. Just kind of keep it really general like that. And then the next time I'll say, well, let me tell you about your MRI and tell you what features of your MRI makes this an uphill battle. But then by the 6th time we're having that conversation, the patient's well aware that they might not get cured, and they can hear that in a manner that's much more, it's easier for them to receive it than just have that bowl them over with all that information, including the really bad news up front.
So honesty is still there. The brutality is what diminished.
Well, it's diffused out.
Diffused out, yes.
Yeah, spread it out.
And now, the battles that you feel that you will win, do you overpromise and underdeliver, or do you just overdeliver and underpromise? Like, that this is something we're going to beat, but You don't say that outright that we're going to beat this. It doesn't.
No, because that's deceptive, right?
Right.
Like I would never ever tell my patients something that isn't true or give them false hope.
Even if you think that the odds are we're going to beat it, you still.
Well, then I'm honest, and I just say,
Okay.
I'll tell them. I'll say the odds are you're going to beat this. When I'm clear, I'll say that doesn't mean 100%.
Right.
And when you're honest and forthright like that with patients, they really appreciate it.
Right.
And even if the news is not something they want to hear, they definitely appreciate the honesty.
Now let's go to the beginning of everything. The first principles. Why do we even have cancer?
Well, that's not the beginning of everything. Yeah, when you said beginning of everything, first principles, I thought you were talking about, like, why does the universe exist?
We're going to go there later.
Fair enough. Why do people have cancer?
Yeah.
I'm going to get a little woo-woo for
Please.
you, but that's why I'm here. So what I have developed through medical school all of the Western vernacular that doctors are supposed to use to talk about why cancer happens. But as I've become 56 years old, I have discovered things about the universe that they don't teach you in medical school. And that tells a completely different story about why cancer happens. So the doctor answer is that there are genetic mutations, either inherited from your parents or just through living your life, and all your cellular activity just makes mistakes in the genetic programming. And if there's a mistake made in a gene that controls for cell growth, that can lead to a cell growing out of control, and that mutates and becomes cancer. And there are environmental factors or, a variety of things that can lead to that. But the other way that I now look at cancer, and I really rarely share this with patients because they don't want to hear it. They want to hear the Western medical stuff. But I think that in a very real sense, in a manner that's much deeper than we ever appreciate on a normal daily basis, but in a very real sense, the entire universe is just a flow of energy.
Yes.
And when that energy sometimes gets dark or is not moving in a healthy manner, it's moving into a dark place, that's what can lead to disease, including cancer. And I think that they're both accurate, and they're both just different ways of explaining the same thing.
Thank you for bringing that up, Doc, because I remember when my mom had cancer, when two of my friends had cancer, these are all women, the common denominator, aside from, and they had different lifestyles, but the only common denominator were the men in their lives.
Mm.
The men in their lives were giving them a hard time, and they were all martyrs.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, right?
The energy.
That's a heavy energy
Very
for a
heavy,
person
yes.
to absorb.
Yes.
And we are not an infinite reservoir of absorbing negative energy, right? Things can get broken and diseases can happen.
And to your metaphor a while ago, net. Even if you describe yourself as being a net, nets only sift through what can pass through them. There are residues
Right.
that are
Absolutely.
left, and eventually they accumulate over time, right?
Yeah. That's why you got to clean your net out every day.
Exactly, right? So now, did you know about this before going to your night voodoo practice, or your night voodoo practice led you to uncover this part that energy had everything, or probably something to do with why cancer happened?
Yeah. The work that I did that led me to become a psychedelic medicine doctor
Yes.
is the same work that taught me about energy and taught me that there is another way to think of the universe other than everything is made out of particles that started at the Big Bang. that there's literally two ways of perceiving the universe.
Can you take us back to your epiphany? I'm very curious. What led you to What led you to that? How old were you? Were you a practicing doctor already, or were you in med school? Take us back.
Well,
this is very interesting.
Yeah, no,
and the only reason why I'm just learning this like this year in 2023, and we were talking about this like whatever it is that I'm just learning now, and I'm very, very curious because at some point it has to come to us for us to have clarity of what life is and what our purpose is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way the world is designed and the way we're designed as human beings, more specifically, the way our mind is designed, we're designed to believe that the physical reality that we live in is all that there is. And our culture has developed a sense that anything outside of what you can see and perceive is just fantasy or woo-woo or fairy tales or wishful thinking.
And you've always questioned that, or you embraced that at one point in your life?
No, I was very much brainwashed by the greater Academy of Science. I thought anything that had to do with something non-physical was just bullshit. It was woo-woo. Right. But I have a completely different perspective now. And so you asked where that developed from. And I just want to warn your listeners that this is a story that requires them to kind of put a seatbelt on, because it's really, really mind-blowing. And
blow our minds, Doc.
Well, the challenge is that a handful of people can kind of follow the mind-blowing stuff, but another handful of people are going to be like, that's crazy, and tune out. So I apologize if you get a few people clicking out of this podcast. But it starts when I was in my mid-40s, early 40s, and a bunch of bad things had happened to me in my life. And I was sucked into a pretty severe depression. So serious enough that I started wondering if killing myself was the only way to make my pain go away. I was going to see a psychiatrist. I was on a bunch of different psych meds, and I had a talk therapist that I saw weekly, and nothing was helping me. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, Randy, why don't you come over to my house?" And I'm going to keep the details private just for my own personal safety. But a friend of mine said, "Come over to my house and participate in a medicine ritual." And I thought to myself, I've never done that before. And mind you, I was a product of the 80s, and I am probably the only kid who believed that commercial with the frying pan and the egg. This is your brain on drugs. Yeah. Remember that? And so I figured I want to be a doctor, so I can't take any drugs. But at the point that I was suicidal, I was like, well, what can I lose? So I went over to a friend's house, and I participated in a medicine ritual where I didn't have any of the metrics that I now look for as a doctor of psychedelic medicine. I just giggled for like 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6. I giggled so hard that my stomach hurt. But when I woke up the next morning, my depression was completely gone. Like, I was totally cured. And I instantly knew that something had shifted inside my brain. I knew it wasn't some temporary thing. I had a different outlook on life. And I stopped taking all my psych meds that day. And I called my psychiatrist on Monday and was like, "Thanks for your help. None of it worked. I found something else and I'm fine now, so I'm going to stop your medicine." And I knew exactly what she was going to say, because I say this to my cancer patients when I gave them Prozac, and 2 weeks after their Prozac starts working, they go, "I'm fine. I don't need it anymore." And I go, "No, it just started working. You can't stop." And so this is what this woman said. And I said, "No, there was a fundamental shift in my brain chemistry. I don't need this stuff anymore." And that was 14 years ago or so. But then I never ever thought about going back to these medicines. I didn't really understand what they could offer until I had a patient, a cancer patient that I saw.
How many years later?
About 1.5 years later.
Okay.
Had a cancer patient, and I see my patients undergoing radiation once a week. And I think it was on the second week I was about to go in, and this patient's girlfriend pulls me aside and says, "Dr. Scharlach, I have to tell you, your friend," we'll just call him L, to keep him private. Your friend L is a druggie. And I go, okay, tell me about what's going on. She goes, well, once a month, these hippies come over to our house and they take magic mushrooms and MDMA and LSD at the same time.
Oh my God.
And she just sits there waiting for me to go, okay, let's go in there and give him a lesson. And I just thought about it and I said, that is awesome. I was like, wow, what does this guy know that I don't?
Yeah.
So I walk in there and I go, so I heard about your parties every month. And he goes, parties? No, they're not parties. He said, it's work. I said, what do you mean work? He goes, well, have you ever tried, these kind of medicines? And I said, one time. And he said, was it work? I said, no, I just giggled for 5 hours. And he said, well, look, I promise you this. If you adopt these medicines into a spiritual practice on a regular basis, that you will experience personal growth beyond anything you can imagine.
Like exponential kind
Yeah.
of. Oh.
Like, putting your,
Transcending.
Transcending. Yeah. My whole mindset about what reality is has shifted. But his point is that some of the work along the way to get there will be very, very difficult. Ooh. But he said it's worth the effort. And so I got more deeply into this personal work.
So after that conversation, you had to contemplate about it, right? Or were you like, let me just go?
No, it's interesting. So like old Randy would have been contemplative about it because I'm very in my head a lot and I like to think about things, but this was more of felt intuition. I felt that this was the right calling for me. And so I started working with these things. And to specifically answer your question, you asked, well, what happened to me that shifted my perspective? And so during a ceremony, I was walking, talking, just like we are now, but then I closed my eyes. And as soon as I closed my eyes, something fascinating happened that I never knew was a thing. I was telling Michael about this at lunch. I closed my eyes and my sense of I, whatever that thing is that I refer to when I use the word I, it stayed the same. But that I retracted out of this mind-body thing called Randy.
Yes.
And it came outside of Randy and it went, oh, wow, I'm not Randy. But then it left the solar system and then it left the universe and it looked around and it remembered something. It remembered that there's only one thing, which is loving energy, that the entire physical universe is manifested from, and that this thing that I thought of was Randy, that is this I, is the I of all that energy, such that you as a consciousness and me as a consciousness are actually sharing the same consciousness.
Yes.
But it's in a pool of energy that's outside of what we can perceive every day. And that and chooses to experience what it's like to be a Randy. So it makes a Randy and it pops into Randy and has Randy be its avatar. And it wants to know what it's like to be a Paco. So it makes a Paco and it sits into Paco and it's looking out through Paco's eyes and it's listening to Randy through Paco's ears. And when I kind of came out of that experience, I didn't know what to make of it. I was like, I'd never heard of this concept that the universe is just one thing. I'd never heard of this concept that consciousness is actually shared between people. And so what I did is I started Googling, and I don't remember what search terms I used, but I very quickly found some ancient Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and some certain early Hindu traditions that are entirely based on this concept that the world is based on a loving conscious energy and that the world that we see as a physical universe is a very, very special type of illusion that comes out of this deeper energy. And that is something that, interestingly enough, one can also approach from the scientific perspective.
Yep.
Because I think I was mentioning that the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics, it was just awarded last October. It was awarded for experimental confirmation of this idea that the entirety of the physical universe is actually running on a mathematical program that's kind of below our level of reality that we can't perceive.
Below or above?
Well, either way, just outside
the depth of our perception.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
It's like having a fourth dimension, kind of.
Exactly. And that you can approach this mystery of the universe, that there's something making everything happen. You can approach that through scientific experiments, but you can also approach it a completely different way by going inside yourself and transcending your own sense of self and investigating what is my consciousness. And that those two completely different avenues of exploration seem to lead us to the same place.
Which is why when people need to have a breakthrough, they have to let go of all their limiting beliefs.
Absolutely.
Because like to your point, if there is that big pool of consciousness, energy that's abundant in love and everything else, it's the physical Randy, the physical Paco, that actually is preventing us from moving forward to the direction where we ought to be or ought to go.
Yeah, well, more specifically, to drill down on that idea, it's your identification as a Paco that is the limitation.
Yep.
And that to transcend that limitation, you simply identify as the consciousness that's having Paco's experience rather than a Paco.
And then and then the fear comes in to prevent us from doing what we need to do, right?
Exactly.
Has both your practice synergized into one benefiting the other? Has it happened already? Have you tried it? Have you bridged them together?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. The answer is yes and no. And so from the broader context, I try very hard to actually keep my two practices very separate.
Right.
And that's because when somebody comes to me to have their life saved and they need radiation, it's a very technical Western medical thing. And most patients are wanting their cancer doctor to remain rigidly stuck in that Western medical context. Not everybody, but a lot of patients don't want to hear about woo-woo things like energy being love and cancer coming from, bad energies flowing. Yeah. It doesn't make people feel comfortable when they've asked me to radiate their cancer. But where this other knowledge has kind of informed the way that I practice is it's helped me be much more patient with my patients and much more compassionate to patients who are difficult. A lot of times a cancer patient is scared.
Yes.
And a lot of times the way they manifest their fear is by being aggressive or belligerent or angry or not listening or not following directions. And when I was younger, I'd get frustrated by that. But now I see them as sacred spirits,
right,
who are attached to an avatar that's struggling, and that anything I'm feeling negative coming from them is just from their avatar, not from their spirit.
Yes, I that makes perfect sense
and
to
so
me.
then I just identify the person as the spirit, and I can discount.
It doesn't become personal anymore.
Exactly. I don't get attached to the way they're behaving.
Yes. Now, with regard to your night practice, what type of patient client would you be welcoming with regard to that?
Yeah, it's basically two populations of patients who are appropriate for psychedelic medicine work. And the most standard is patients who need some type of psychotherapy. So talk therapy is an interesting thing, because talk therapy, when you find an in and you can get into a patient's subconscious,
Yes.
you can really
Latch on.
You can really, yeah, and mine deeply into that patient's psyche and find some injuries, find some traumas,
Right.
and pull them out to work with them, and
Right.
the patient can feel better. But the main problem with talk therapy is that the issues that brings a patient into a psychotherapist's office are subconscious issues. And so you can't just sit on your psychotherapist's couch and say, here's all the things in my subconscious that are bothering me, because it's hidden from you.
And sometimes, yeah, you're right, because it has to be discovered by both of you. You by
Right.
sharing, and the other person by
Right. The therapist
by listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can, just like
Yeah.
you're a wonderful guide of a conversation. That's what a therapist does. They guide the conversation to help elicit
Yes, yes.
your memories of your subconscious traumas. But the way our mind is designed, part of our mind wants to protect us from those painful memories. So it makes it difficult for us to remember them. Well, if you give somebody a little bit of ketamine while they're talking to their psychotherapist, what the ketamine does is it cuts those, that it puts a hole in the fence that your subconscious has used to block
protect-
off
yes.
these memories, so that these subconscious memories can come to the forefront of your consciousness, and you can say, oh, yeah, this happened to me, that happened to me, this is the way I reacted, and now that I think about it, I'm still carrying that negative reaction. It's amazing when a 5-year-old has a trauma of something kind of mild. To the 5-year-old, it's a huge deal, right? If you want the piece of birthday cake that got handed to the kid at the party next to you,
You're bringing that, yeah.
right? I mean, I want the one with the candle. Little kids can cry over the silliest thing. And to us, it seems silly, but to the kid, that's a trauma in his
Yes.
life. And if it doesn't get processed properly at the age of 5, then you can create this psychological dysfunction that stays with you, and it doesn't. Your 5-year-old self is still stuck holding on to that injury.
Very true. I agree.
Right? And so what can happen is when you're 50 years old, you might make a bad decision that is actually influenced by that 5-year-old energy stuck inside of you.
Yeah.
And with ketamine, a person can much more easily look inside themselves and identify these different parts that are frequently injured. And you can talk to these parts and talk to that 5-year-old, and you can say, hey, you know what? Paco was okay that day. He actually enjoyed his piece of cake that he got, and he's not 5 years old anymore. He's a, successful band guy, and, he has a successful podcast, and he's doing great. And that part can go, oh, you mean I don't have to play this role? I don't have to create this dysfunction in Paco's life
And this is going on while under the influence of ketamine, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then when that little part inside of you that's causing some pain because it's reacting to an unresolved trauma, when it realizes that trauma is no longer hurting you, then it stops conducting its dysfunctional behavior.
Question is when is it when the experience subsides? I wouldn't say when the high subsides, but when the experience subsides, is there a shift inside that with regard? That's what I wanna. I'm curious to know. Will it shift? Because you're putting a hole in the fence. The opportunity is there because of the ketamine and the experience. But when the experience subsides, when that hole closes, are you able to fix what's inside, what's behind the fence?
Well, not only do you fix what is behind the fence, but that lesson that you learned by fixing stays with you.
And maybe the fence is not even there anymore because
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, over time, the fence just sort of slowly
there's
goes
nothing
away.
to protect, right?
Exactly. I imagine childhood traumas as things that are protector mechanism creates a little closet for, and then takes that memory and puts it in the closet, and then closes the door, locks the door, and then pushes a cabinet and goes, okay, my work's done. That memory's stuck in there and it's never going to bother me again. But that's not what happens. These painful childhood traumas pop out at the worst time possible, like when we're stressed or under fear or threat. And that little 5-year-old pops out and goes, I've got this. And then it does something very dysfunctional. But if you can kind of make peace with all those little parts that are causing these dysfunctions in your life, then your whole sense of well-being goes up a notch, like a big notch.
How many times do you have to do? So this is more like kind of like therapy.
Oh, it's not kind of like therapy.
It is.
We call it CAP. K-A-P. Okay. Ketamine-assisted psychotherapy.
Huh.
And so the primary treatment isn't the ketamine.
Okay.
The primary treatment is the psychotherapy.
Right.
But
assisted by
the ketamine. It's think of it like a nitrous booster on a street racer, right? You can go so fast with your engine, but then you pump nitrous into the system and then you take over your opponent. Adding ketamine is like a lubricant for your subconscious to start moving the gears in a way that your conscious mind can start working with.
So from going to therapy to actually being a psychotherapy therapist. Now, is this, when you say ketamine assisted, it has to be done in front of you?
Yeah. So most of my work I do.
And Doc, the reason why I'm asking, because I have friends who actually steam or cook their own ketamine. So I just have to differentiate, because our listeners might go, I do that.
Well, so you're getting into the nuances of kind of some of the medical legal issues.
Yes,
so
please.
Ketamine is a very, very safe medicine. It was proven on the battlefields of Vietnam, because before Vietnam, before they had ketamine, medics only had morphine.
Right.
And morphine's an opioid. It can cause respiratory depression. I mean, we know we're in the middle of an opioid crisis. People are dying from overdosing. And if one medic had to take care of 12 injured soldiers, he couldn't monitor 12 people at once who he had to give morphine to. But he could give 12 people ketamine and not worry about them, and then spend his time on the most ill person. But to answer your question, within today's modern legal context, ketamine cannot be given by a psychotherapist because it's a controlled substance.
Yes, it is.
It's not under psychotherapy. It's under the umbrella of medical care. So that's where I come in. A doctor has to give the injection, and I have a responsibility as the treating physician to be with that patient the entire time that they're altered by the ketamine.
Thank you. Because that's what I want to make clear, that this is not your leisure drug kind of thing.
It's the same chemical that people are using at parties and raves and whatnot, but it's just being used in a totally different context. Right? It's like a knife. A knife can kill you if you run into one in a bar fight, or a knife can save your life if it's in a surgeon's hands and they're removing a cancer.
True.
So any tool can hurt you or help you, and I'm using ketamine to help people.
Nice. So Doc, with your two practices, did you see yourself doing both? Did you project yourself the way you are now when you decided to go to medical school? Am I making sense with what I said?
Well, are you asking if when I went to medical school, I would ever imagine that I would be where I am now?
Doing what you're doing now?
No, not in 1,000 billion years. Well, I mean, I'm for 13,
you know what I'm saying, right?
Well, but that's true in my personal life too. And for 13 years, I've been with my wonderful partner, Emily Williams.
Shout out, Emily.
Shout out to Emily. So she and I went to high school together, and I ended up marrying my 9th grade sweetheart, and I was with her for a very long time. And if you had asked me when I was in medical school, would I ever end up living with Emily Williams from the class below me, I would have said, there's just no possible way. No. But here I am with her for 13 years. And so, one of the things I've learned is that no matter how well you plan your life out, there are definitely some twists and turns along the way.
And the reason why I asked that, and again, nothing is scripted with this. You mentioned that you wouldn't have thought it was possible, and that was high school Randy thinking that. But now, looking back in hindsight, 2020, things we deem impossible are possible. Especially with what we were talking about transcending, about energy and all. What's the takeaway, Doc? Let's talk about cancer. We thought it was a death sentence. Now it's not. Sometimes it's a nuisance. It has to be taken seriously. But your outlook, personally, as Randy Scharlach, what's the outlook now? Like you said, things I thought that was impossible when I was younger. Now I'm like, whoa, that's a possibility now. I'm not putting you in a position to give false hope to people who are watching, who have cancer and all that. But
what's the message? Yeah. So this is a perfect segue into the second half of a question you asked earlier.
Yes.
You asked, well, what's like the typical patient?
Yep.
Who am I taking care of in this voodoo nighttime medical practice? And I said that there were kind of two populations of patients. One patient group we've talked about, which are the folks who need psychotherapy. Well, the second part, which is the answer to your most recent question, is that the other group of people that I work with are folks who do not need psychotherapy. They're well adjusted in their life, but one of the things that the Buddha recognized 2,500 years ago when he sat for a few days under the Bodhi tree, he realized that suffering is an unavoidable aspect of life. And it's something that I call NHC.
NHC, okay.
Normal human condition. No matter how happy you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter like every single checklist in the life that you want could be checked, but every single human still suffers. And so the question is there anything that I could teach somebody to minimize their daily suffering? And
minimize their daily suffering or increase the acceptance of the suffering they will inevitably...
Well, okay, both. Okay. I mean, because what we're talking about here, just to kind of clarify, words can only give us a partial story. So any words that I choose, I could also tell you why those words are not right, because we're really just talking about analogies and metaphors here. But so to go back to this idea that the entire universe is made out of loving consciousness.
Yeah.
What I teach people, and this is extremely unintuitive to be able to just sort of process on your own, and it can take a psychedelic medicine to shift your conscious perspective to be able to absorb this lesson. But if you stop identifying as a Paco, and you change your notion of what you refer to when you use the word I, and you use I to refer to the loving consciousness of the universe that's seeing the world through Paco's eyes, that simple shift in your perspective of self can help you let go of all the suffering that Paco experiences because of the drama in Paco's life. That, here's a simple analogy. When you're playing a video game, you're playing Mario Brothers. When Mario gets hurt or he dies, you don't start crying. You just put in another quarter.
Yes.
And your life is much more like a video game where your consciousness is playing Paco. Rather than Paco being a thing in and of itself. And again, this is a very, very non-intuitive, very difficult concept for people to grasp. And you can't grasp it just by being told it. You need hours and hours of reading and discussion and psychedelic experiences to change your perspective to kind of adopt this as a lifestyle.
That's true.
But once you change your identity from being a person to being a loving consciousness, your entire life experience as a human being changes for the better.
Like when people say, Doc, some people would say, I've always been a victim. The reality could be, no. That's your avatar defining itself as
100%.
being a victim.
And that's exactly what changed for me when I had that first experience that I said I woke up from and I was cured. My depression was gone. What happened was I had a victim mentality. You know, I just had a loop in my head of spinning around all the bad things that had happened to me, all the unfair things, all the ways that I was a victim. And what a medicine ceremony helped me do was just look at a different part of my life and say, well, my kids are healthy.
Right.
You know, I have the opportunity to fly home and see them every other week. You know, my life, I wasn't in a foxhole in Iraq getting shot at. I wasn't in prison. You know, my life was pretty darn good. And all I had to do was just see my life through that different lens.
Yes.
And my depression went away.
So, Doc, just now that I'm thinking about it, what's your take on deja vu?
Deja vu is really interesting. So to kind of go along with the theme of
energy
me answering, both Western medical perspective and an energy perspective.
Yes.
The Western medical perspective is pretty simplistic. The idea is that deja vu is when your brain is processing a circumstance or an event before. Well, let me say this differently. It's when your brain puts something into memory before it processes it. Then when you're processing it, it feels like it's something that you've experienced before. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really just, to a Western medical neurology perspective, it's just a misfiling into a memory before you process it. But from an energetic perspective, I rarely feel deja vu anymore, but I actually did recently. And as it was happening, what it seemed like to me is that two very similar but parallel universes were temporarily mixing, so that I was seeing two different worlds at once. And then the world that this form of my avatar stayed in kind of separated from the other one. And for the brief moment when these two universes are mixing, that's to me what deja vu is and feels like.
Since you mentioned that, let's go a little bit further. Is it safe to say you subscribe to the multiverse?
I'd say it a little softer than that. I'd say that one of the respected interpretations of modern quantum theory is that there are multiple universes that result from splitting of one universe.
Same energy, different avatars in different universes. Am I?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Or maybe different perspectives of looking at the same whole.
Which means I may die in this universe because of the choices I made in that life. My avatar, not me, but my avatar. But succeed in this specific universe and fail miserably in another universe. Is that?
Absolutely. And that typically under normal circumstances, these two universes are completely separate. We don't have any way to access another universe. But if these two universes could merge together for a little bit, almost like two bubbles coming together, and you get that interface where they're shared, that's, to me, feels like what's happening when I'm experiencing a deja vu.
Wow! Is it safe to say, if you're not into all of these things, just to go, I wouldn't say granular, but just to be more broad, gratitude really does help?
Yeah, it's not more than help. It's like living a life of gratitude is the way to minimize the normal human condition of suffering.
Would you say, Doc, before we land this, not me, but I'll speak for me and the audience, from a day-to-day perspective, I journal, I walk, I meditate. It's helped. I've overcome challenges in my life just by a simple shift in lifestyle and perspective. But I'm not good at encouraging people to write thoughts on paper. I'm not good at having people come take a walk with me and all that. But you're the guy people go to. What can you tell me and tell others? What kind of lifestyle ritual change do we need to do? Just a little piece of advice to make our lives better from your experience and perspective.
Yeah, again, great question. And the answer is remarkably simple. Spend 20 minutes a day just being quiet. If you want to use the word meditation, you can, but 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening, just that simple exercise of deciding to take 10 minutes to turn every alarm off, to just put your phone on silent, and to just sit, eyes open or closed, however you're comfortable. And you don't have to sit in some yogic swami position. You could lie down, just be comfortable. But just give yourself 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night for your brain to rest. And the technique that I like the most is to imagine that you're sitting by a river, and anytime a thought comes up, you don't fight it. You don't try to say, I'm not going to think about that. You just let that thought be, but you take it and visually put it in a little boat, a little toy boat that's going down this river, and just let that thought go away. And then your mind will be empty for 2 seconds, and then another thought will pop up. You just take that thought and you put it in a little boat, and you just repeat that process for 10 minutes, that you let your mind be silent. When a thought pops up, you just blow it away. And just doing that can help calm parts of your brain that otherwise can start steamrolling out of control and poking on you and causing you to suffer about things that are really immaterial. And so that's the answer to your question. 20 minutes of meditating or quiet time every day.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Randy Scharlach. Thank you. If you want more, I'll put the link to Dr. Randy's website in the description below. Feel free to reach out to him. I'm pretty sure we've touched a heart. Please don't forget to pass and share along this episode and help us save a life.